Give me the serenity to accept what I cannot change,
Yeah.
the courage to change what I can,
Yeah.
and the wisdom to know the difference.
Even pain can become your familiarity.
Because at that time, once you surrender and you become the victim, it's like you have taken all the responsibility you had of changing the situation. You said, I cannot do anything. I have no
Yeah.
power. So
Yeah.
then you have no responsibility. There's no pressure on yourself. This is how some people try to avoid it. You tried. You became creative. Some people stopped becoming creative intentionally.
Resilience is not about, well, I fell, and so step up. Resilience is about, I fell, I step up, and I move forward.
Get them to see what they have done before. You ask yourself the question, have I been through situations like this before? What did I do well? How did I do it? Did I overcome? What was the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
And what was the best case scenario out of that? So when we ask those questions, we
Yeah.
suddenly...
And that's where I believe coaching is very powerful, because coaching is tend to be much more looking forward. It's much more has relying on your own agency in activating it. So we can never outgrow the quality of our relationship or our leadership or the quality of our life if we don't improve.
We don't resist the change, we resist the loss of the identity, the person we
Yeah.
are. And we
Yeah.
feel like what's going to happen, it's not me, even subconsciously.
Yeah.
Sometimes we struggle that we are losing that identity. But
Yeah.
we have to learn. You can count from 90 to 1. Just take your time, but if it feels too much, you can do like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Knowing Who You Are on In Conversation with Ershad and Marco. Hope everyone is having a great time, great week. As you know, people who have been following it, all these different episodes we have done so far, we try to tackle the difficult questions of life or in life, what we face on a day-to-day basis. So we have tackled topics like anger, the partners we choose, how it shapes us into how we become, and ideas of perfectionism, a lot of different topics. So in that line, we are going to touch upon a very important one, and I feel that it's very important due to the current climate where we're living in, the global tectonic shifts, I would say, and the political pressure, and also the pressure that we are facing from technology like AI, and people have a lot of uncertainty in their mind. So it's very important that we build that muscle, how we learn to navigate through this uncertainty, and also to be able to grieve the loss of a guaranteed future, which people in previous generations have. So we start our discussion as usual. I have Marco with me. Marco, welcome.
Thank you for having me again. I'm still
So
alive.
yeah, so am I. Trust me. I mean, I for people to know that we almost decided that I couldn't carry on with this recording when we are doing it today because I was feeling awful because of a flu. But thankfully enough, when I woke up, I think I slept through it and I feel okay. But I've been going through for the last couple of days. But all good now. And we are finally here. Marco,
Yes.
thanks for making the time because a lot of uncertainties here and there. But yeah, that's speaking of uncertainty, right? Confusion, uncertainty, but how we can navigate our way through this uncertainty, that's the question.
Yes. So is that a question to me now?
No. Okay, let's find a nice strand or a thread for you. Psychologists who do their research with stress, they found there are three factors that makes us feel very awful whenever we find ourselves in stressful situations. One is the lack of control. Second is uncertainty. And the third is the perception that things are constantly getting worse. It won't get better. And that's where uncertainty kicks in. So do you think this is the right line of thinking with uncertainty? How do you define uncertainty?
Well, I think there's definitely elements what you just mentioned in there, a loss of control, not knowing what the outcome is, and then a negative outlook, entertaining that. One feeds the other. For me, uncertainty can come, of course, in many different ways. like a job loss, a disaster, a criminal offense, somebody is being killed, a war, a national collapse. Uncertainty is all around us. I begin to realize, going through my own life disruptions, as I call them, or life quakes, some of them were very intense, is that I have to change my relationship with uncertainty. And maybe speaking it metaphorically, what if we imagine that uncertainty is your dance partner? How would that change you in your dealing with it? And let's imagine that this person is the most beloved person from you, so you're your best friend, but the name is called uncertainty. So, and that to me means there's already a change. So as soon as you start thinking about that, well, wait a minute, if that's my friend, then I have a different dimension. So how would I then deal differently with life? And I think personally, we have to increase our transitional intelligence, as I call it, meaning life disruption will be part of life. Life can be very unpredictable. People will be thrown into transitions either by imposed on them or by choice. And so we have to become much more agile, much more flexible, much more creative, much more growth-minded, how to navigate it. But if we are cling to our identities, if we cling to our roles, if we cling to control, and we see that only as the way of survival, it becomes very threatening. So how do we become more agile, how you say that, have the capacity to deal with uncertainty much better? I think it has a lot to do with adaptable, is how we see it and approach it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely we'll be touching upon how different, the different ways of addressing these issues, how we can become more adaptable, as you mentioned. But there's an interesting idea that the windows of certainty. So, say for example, every human being, you, I, and everyone who's listening to it, who are watching us, that we all have a different kind of window of certainty. So, beyond that threshold, we start feeling that anxiety. So long we are within that, and we need a little bit of uncertainty in our life. Say, for example, this is one of the reasons why people who go for this roller coaster ride, you enjoy that, because once you reach the top, it suddenly stopped. You wait for it, uncertain. What's going to happen? You love that. But if throughout the roller coaster ride, it's always like this, then it has crossed that threshold, then all the time you are going through this uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen. Am I going to have a big drop now? Am I going to have a big drop? So there's no easy ride. It's just keep on dropping, and you don't know what's happening next. So that's when the window of certainty, you cross the threshold and the anxiety kicks in. But again, within the window of certainty, whatever your tolerance is, within that time, nothing big happens though. That's not the growth, because that's something you are used to. So everything happens most of the times beyond that window, because once you go into that uncertain territory, that's a change. That's something that you haven't experienced before, but that's your chance of facing some kind of growth. Not all the time, not everyone has to go through it. With a caveat, I would like to say that, because there are choices in my life that I backed off from as well. Because I felt, okay, that was nice to start. I wanted to know that. And I started that, and there's a point I felt, no, it's not for me. I mean, I don't have to prove anything to anyone, even to myself. Fine, I wanted to know that, but is this something I want to do? I mean, we'll get to that topic too. How we have to decide that what's good for me. What is my tolerance?
Well, I think, let's flip it on its head, you know, because I think it may be also much more relatable to the people who are listening. When you lose your home because you can't pay your mortgages anymore, because you lost your job, you have a relationship breakdown at the same time. How are you dealing with that? How are you coping with that? When there's an accumulation of events that comes together, which I call then a life quake, our mind is basically overwhelmed with the amount of data basically being bombarded with, and doesn't know how to handle it because it's too overwhelming. And that's why people, when they experience trauma, and it could be triggered by anything in a way, they enter into a trauma fog. In other words, the brain is in so much in overdrive trying to figure it out how to survive, how to cope with the threat of the loss of security, the loss of maybe even food, supplies, relationship, whatever what seems normal is now suddenly gone. That's where I believe there is a decision to be made. And that's something I've experienced myself, many, many years ago when a life quake did happen. I quickly began to realize not what happens to me, but the decision how I will respond will determine whether I will make it or not. I was still in the power seat, even though at that time it felt hugely overwhelming, hugely traumatic, emotional, relational, financial. It was just a collapse on so many different ways. But in the midst of that, I realized I have to make a choice. And the choice is, how do I recreate? How do I come out of this? What kind of small thing can I do today? Not tomorrow, because that's already uncertain too much. What can I do in front of me today in order to move forward? And I began to realize that in the midst of this, by having that approach, creativity starts to flow again, because creativity can't flow when you're in panic mode, only when you are more calm. So when I begin to step back and realize this is gone, I have to grieve the loss that is not going to be returned. And that is a process in itself. Of course, I speak now about it much more easier than when you have asked me, in that time frame, because that was very different. But now I realize by allowing myself to decide, well, what is life really about? What is my higher purpose? Which means I have to think about that more, because if I don't have a purpose for living, then how do I keep going? So these are basically more, I call it why questions, existential questions, that initially people may say, well, but that doesn't give food on the table, that doesn't give you a roof over your head.
This is where you reframe your thoughts, and that's where the idea, I feel like it's very important, because in Stoic philosophers, they mention that, and the idea of what you can control, what you cannot, which is like what is within control, what is beyond my control.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of this very beautiful prayer it is attributed to a theologian. He says that, give me the serenity to accept what I cannot change.
Yeah.
The courage to change what I can.
Yeah.
And the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
So the interesting idea is that once you can separate these two, life quake is quite a big thing, I would say, because normally, even again in research, every 18 months to 5 years, normally we come through some kind of life quake. Either it's disease, loss of a relationship, or, divorce, and sometimes someone's dying, or even you might come up with a terminal disease. Things like that happen. But even on a smaller scale, say, for example, you are in a city and you feel like everything, the policing system, the political turmoil, everything is quite falling apart. And what you can do, you are feeling quite anxious. You don't know what's happening. So here, the beyond is the control, how the policing is happening, the political turmoil is not within your control. But I can say that with caveat, I'll be saying it. For some people, it might be within their control to say that, okay, I'm going to relocate. Let's leave this city, move to a safer place. It's not practical for everyone, but some people can take it. For them, it's within their control.
Yeah.
But also for some, it might be beyond their control. Then they have to break it down further. Yeah. What are we going to do? So let's see what's within my control. So what you just said, even the creativity, when it will start flowing, when you find your fears, you categorize them, you divide them under two heads. Okay, within control, beyond control. what I can control. Because if you keep on struggling towards something that you cannot control, even when you feel like you have gained some kind of control, you see that anxiety is always there because you're trying to win an uphill battle and it's not
Yeah,
going to happen. Whenever you are faced with anxiety, they try to do something called anxious fixing. It's like, okay, let's answer some emails. Let's hoover the house. Let's clean the living room. But the thing is that that's not the problem. You're not facing the anxiety. Your anxiety is trying to protect you from something. You need
yeah,
to stop, pause, and think. And that's when the creativity would flow
yeah.
because you're recognizing it, acknowledging it, that there's something happening. Why am I anxious? And my anxiety is trying to protect me from something. So you have to say that I see you. Okay, what are you trying to tell me? And
Hmm.
that's when slowly you start finding those answers and the creativity that will, because creativity is also something that when you give yourself the time to think, and creativity is not just one solution.
No,
You have 10 solutions there. That's how you're becoming creative because all those ideas are your creative ideas.
yeah.
And then you think again, this idea, is it within my control? Can I do it? No. Oh, this one I can. Then you prioritize. Okay, how many? I found five that is workable. Which one is the best one? And how? That's creativity.
In the midst of loss, I had to come to the conclusion, well, I can't go backwards, so I need to create something new. So what does the new look like? And how
Mm,
do I have the drive in order to move forward? For me, I had to find my purpose, which I found, which I'm happy about because that really is become my compass.
mm,
But then I had to translate it into, well, how can I make a living out of this? How can I turn this around? I still had to take risk, and this is I think sometimes the scariest things for a lot of people, because when you're in the midst of uncertainty, the last thing you want to think about is taking another risk. But yet that can be the key for unlocking. So
mm.
for me, in the midst of uncertainty, I didn't have the finances at the time to do what I wanted to do. So I really felt this sounds like a good, well, not only sounds, this really feels like this makes my heart come alive. I will take a step in this. And I invested in my training and I put it on the credit card because I had access to a credit card. I didn't know what to do next if I didn't have the access to a credit card, but that's another story.
Then you have
But
to be creative again to think that, okay,
exactly.
what can I do?
But what I want to stress is even in uncertainty, risk will be important.
Mm,
Because what I now, working with people, the first thing that people tend to do when they hit a crisis is that their mind is in overdrive. They want to find a solution as soon as possible because they want to create security.
mm.
Taking risk is not part of that. And yet the risk factor of, and I'm not saying
But
unwise
you
risk,
using your credit card, wasn't it a risk?
well, it was a risk because I didn't know in that time frame how I would pay it back.
Exactly. So there is certain element of risk, as I was saying, that the window of the tolerance, you have to cross a little bit of that threshold.
Yeah,
Because if you don't do it, there won't be any change. You have to
yes.
go on the other side, but within your tolerance, how much you can tolerate.
Well, in the tolerance of losing, I think there must. I have to say this: once you have lost everything, there is something. It's when you've gone through that,
Mm.
you can't go any lower.
Yeah.
So for me, it's having experienced that, you go almost through an invisible wall because you think the wall is there, and once you step through it, I thought, well, what's this all about? And that's
Mm.
basically what I experienced because you extend you go out of your comfort zone, whatever the comfort zone may be represented. In my case, it wasn't much,
Mm-hmm.
but even that can become your comfort, so to speak. So by going beyond it, then you begin to realize you start growing. Keep the positive note. I did pay it all back because I don't have any debt. But on that moment in time, that was for me the only option to consider as a way out.
Mm.
And I also have to say this, and this is I think it was Tony Robbins who said that many years ago when I watched him once. How important our physiology is when we go through challenges. Um, because our physiology, how has an effect on our body language, and you can notice it. For example, if I'm feeling defeated, my body language
Yeah.
will be similar.
Yeah.
But if I change my posture, if I
You crouch a little bit like you're feeling like this rather than confident,
yes,
when you're feeling that.
and I realized I start to apply this in real life because one of the things I said to myself, I refuse to sit down
Mm-hmm.
and to beg or whatever. I will keep on walking
Mm.
and I will find a way. And that changes the physiology. So I didn't stay in my house, and it was like I have to get out. I will find a way. As I will walk, something will come to me, and I now start working with it. And that I think is also important because people can lock themselves into I could almost say make their trauma their residency. Even trauma can become a comfort. Even pain can become your familiarity.
Because at that time, once you surrender and you become the victim, it's like you have taken all the responsibility you had of changing the situation. You said, I cannot do anything. I have no
Yeah,
power. So
yeah,
then you have no responsibility. There's no pressure on yourself. This is how some people try to avoid it. You tried, you became creative. Some people stop becoming creative intentionally.
yeah,
That's okay. I'm done. And what am I gonna do? I'll go to the street. Say for example, I'm not
yeah,
saying it's I'm not making light of people who go through these conditions when they become homeless and they go through the struggle of it. Some people can't help it. There are a lot of other issues, mental issues, and they're incapable of probably working or changing or turning the situation around. But there are some people who just embrace it, thinking that okay, I cannot do anything. It's a matter of resilience, but that's a different topic. We're gonna come to it, but I'll let you continue.
well, it is about a mindset shift. But to be honest, I one of the things I invested in that time frame, and I think has been my saver. Instead of food, I invested in my mindset. So I read
Mm.
books in order to improve. How do I change my perception about my reality? Because my reality is communicating something to me, and this is one of the factors I think so many people will struggle. You see, when something eventful happened to us, which is very painful,
Mm.
and there's no denying that it is traumatic, etc. One of the things that adds additional stress more than anything is our interpretation and the conclusion we draw from that event to ourselves.
Mm.
That increases more stress if that interpretation is basically, I call it I am statement. Well, then I am not good for nothing, or I am worthless, or I am
You
this,
make it
or
your identity.
exactly. So it's very important how we interpret life events because that
Mm.
can all be the biggest I said a game shifter, and I've experienced that, working with people, helping them to see when they're in the midst of trials and they are lifted basically like a helicopter view about what is happening to them, and suddenly they see a shift happening of perspective, and therefore when they see differently they start to behave differently. Not me telling them what to do, or sharing what they should be doing. It's more helping them to get to the realization of a shift of perspective,
Mm.
because how we see things has effect on how we do things. So if we change our way how we see, our action starts to follow. And that's what I applied when I went through my ordeal. Research has shown you turn trauma into post-traumatic growth. You turn it into your advantage. You turn it into a learning curve, a growth curve. And that builds resilience, because resilience is not about, well, I fell, and so step up.
Mm.
Resilience is about I fell, I step up, and I move forward.
One of the myths is that people would tell you, "Oh, become more resilient," and whenever, especially when it comes from family members, acquaintances, or friends, sometimes it's frustrating. And also, there's another. You might have seen it. It's been used a lot during the pandemic. Everyone has to be very resilient. be resilient. You have to face it. This is the situation. But the thing is that when there's a systematic change needs to take place, and the people who are in charge, when they're trying to avoid their responsibility by dumping it on you, that you have
Yeah,
to be resilient and trying to avoid their responsibility, then
yeah.
this is you have to put the system in place. Are you helping the people with their mental health? Rather than saying mentally you have to be resilient. But how? That's the question. I mean, this is one of the issues as well. And we have another tendency that you will always think, okay, I have a bigger anxiety, right? So it means that the risk is as big as well.
Yes, but I think going back to agency, I didn't rely, initially I relied on some funding of the government and then I just quit it because I felt so depressed about it. I thought I don't want this anymore. So I quit. But people would then say you increase your anxiety again, you increase your uncertainty again. For me, it was freedom because I needed to have my creativity. I needed to have my way of finding a way out of this without being constrained into a straitjacket of certain conditions that only I think sometimes keeps people really locked. And so for me, resilience comes out of personal agency, taking action and again. Even when you feel good or feel bad, you try it anyway, each day, every day. And does it mean that life was comfortable in those days? No, it wasn't. It was really tough. And I minimized, my life by design on purpose.
If I speak on my behalf or how I have learned to tackle this kind of, because there had been times in my life when I would be losing sleep over certain things that I'm trying to find a solution, any kind of decisions in life. I would lose sleep over it and I would ruin my present moment as well.
Yeah,
But then, because what they say is that we suffer more in our imagination than in reality.
yeah,
So I learned that later on. Okay, every time I was expecting the worst, I found okay, it's manageable, whatever happened. And it kept happening in my life more and more and more and more. And
yeah,
that's when now I see things. I still go through sometimes situations like that, similar to what I've experienced back then. But now when I see them, I'm like, come on, it's going to be okay. And this is where, as a coach, when we coach people, we ask them those questions. When we say, even if you take a grow model, right? When you talk about the reality and their options, what we always get them to see what they have done before. You ask yourself the question, have I been through situations like this before? What did I do well? How did I do it? And
yeah,
did I overcome? What was the worst case scenario?
yeah,
And what was the best case scenario out of that? Without any soul searching, and if we go deeper and ask us those questions and make us feel confident again, we have to ask those questions and see when we had done those. And
yeah,
what I'm imagining,
yeah.
is there any reality towards it?
And this is where you will need the outside, I would say, help.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all have our narratives that limit us, that we don't tend to see. You always say you can't think outside the box unless you are aware that you're in a box.
Mm.
And so, if you don't recognize you are in a narrative, locked into a narrative, then how can you change? So, and that requires most of the time another objectively listening to you, reflecting and mirroring back what they hear you saying, not they're interjecting, but what they basically reflect back. Well, I hear this. Sounds like this is what is going on. And the interesting thing is that creates a change in perspective and then increases in awareness where then change is possible. And that's what I did in the beginning. I had coaches. I initially had some therapy in order to help me deal with the grief. But then later I realized I don't want to, I need to move forward. And this is, I think, very important. And I say this with all respect, but sometimes I think people stay too long in therapy and they don't make the flip into, I need to create a new life. I
Mm.
need to move forward. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I recognized in my own life therapy had its way, had his service, but there came a point I realized I'm done with it now, and possibly I also have been counseling trade, so I know all the ins and outs of it. I realized I need to get hold of my purpose and I had to start living it. I need to move forward. And that's where I believe coaching is very powerful, because coaching is tend to be much more forward, looking forward. It's much more, it has relying on your own agency in activating it.
Rather than
Um,
keeping on going back to the past and trying to dig up what
yes,
happened there.
because that will can become a narrative, and that's what. And the sad story is, people can easily make, and again, please hear me. They can make their whatever they've encountered their place of residency, because it's familiar. Pain can become very familiar, can become part of your identity. It can give you even certain attention that you normally won't get. So if you have to give up on that, how does life then look like? You see, but it's like when we have a broken leg, we go to the hospital, which is normal because you need to have fixing. But there comes a point you have to leave the hospital, because you can't live a life in the hospital. That would be
This
abnormal.
reminds me, because you talked about the boxes as well. You have to
Yeah.
realize that you're in a box. So it reminds me of a beautiful quote that's attributed to Confucius. He says that every man has two lives. The second one starts the moment he realizes he has only one.
Mm.
So it's like when we always think that, okay, this life we have, this is just a veneer. But the moment you know that you have only one life, so you have to find that opportunity and make the best out of that life. So the
Yeah.
second one starts the moment you realize you just have one.
Yeah.
Because there's a guy I coached, young guy, but his thing is that he kept on telling me that he becomes very anxious before his work days. He does longer shifts, work very hard, young guy, very energetic as well. But problem is, I was just asking, okay, what gave you the idea, and why do you, first of all, why do you get that stressed? He said that I feel like I have to do more and I have my own standards and I have to push myself. If I don't push myself, I won't be able to retain the job. But then I mean, to cut the story short, when I dug deeper, I couldn't find a place, or he couldn't even answer. He couldn't even tell me where that expectation comes from.
Mm.
Did someone tell him that we expect that of you and this is
Mm.
how you need to work? And when he does what he's supposed to do, he's fine. And all the attributes that he's been putting, okay, I don't have this. I feel like I might lose it anytime because I don't have that. That's why I have to do this extra. I say, who told you? No one.
Yeah.
So we build these stories in our head, and sometimes we
Yeah.
get stressed just by our imagination and
By our own expectation we put on ourselves.
on ourselves. And
Yeah.
sometimes there it came from, then I found at some point that there's a advice that came from his dad. His dad had been through certain things in his life, quite a lot of negative experiences. But I said, can you compare it to your life? He said, I don't have those experiences. So I said, how does it advice applicable to your life? It's
Yeah.
fine. It's a well-meaning advice coming from your father. It's a good relationship as well you have. But we have to be able to detach ourselves. Like everything we read, everything we see, is it applicable to me? And
Yeah.
how is it relevant to my life? And this is
Yeah.
why, as you said, a coach comes, they ask those questions, and the
Yeah.
relevant questions that make you realize, make you see, oh, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It has no relevance in my life. Or
Yeah.
no one told me that I have to do these certain things that's making me stressed. And before my work days, I'm getting so
Yeah.
stressed, worked up, that I have to work so hard for 14 hours. So no
Yeah.
one is telling me. If he watches it, I'm sure he'll be okay with that, because I have this permission, just because people might be wondering, okay, why are you sharing a client story? But the thing is, I have his permission. And because back in the days, I even recorded some of our sessions as well. So I have expressed permission from him. So that's why I'm sharing. Because as coaches, we have to understand that this is a private conversation we have with our
Yeah.
clients. So
Yeah.
if we are allowed, so for everyone to know. Hi guys, I'm really sorry for interrupting this video. I promise I won't be long. As you might know, we have always maintained that we are not here to chase numbers. Our focus has always been on creating something meaningful and sharing it for free, what might end up helping others. but at the same time, to please the ever mysterious algorithm gods and to reach a wider audience, we need your support. So it would be my humble request to you all, wherever you watch our content, be it on Instagram or YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channels. That would help us immensely to keep on creating the content and sharing it with you all. Thank you. Now, let's get back to the video.
Yes, but it comes back to and that's what again, that's informed through my own journey. I begin to realize the quality of our thinking determines the quality of our life, our leadership, and our relationship. So we can never outgrow the quality of our relationship or our leadership or the quality of our life if we don't improve our way of thinking and our level of awareness. But how many people are exposing themselves to increase it? They stay locked into the same patterns over and over again. Something happens and then they revert back to old coping mechanisms or old ways of doing, because maybe previous generation did the same thing, so we do the same thing.
No,
Instead
even in their
of
life, if they have a pattern, if it follows the pattern, they feel comfortable. The moment they see
yeah,
it's not matching any pattern,
yeah,
then they become uncomfortable. I mean, you mentioned leadership. Are you aware of this term, premature certainty? Premature certainty is, say, in organizational behavior, sometimes you'll see someone has come with a problem. And there's a leader in the room, and he feels that as a leader, you have to come up with a decision. Even we value the speediness and the decisiveness in a leader. And the moment you are a little bit hesitant, it shows that you're confused probably, and it's your weakness, some people think. So what they do, they say, okay, we're going to do this, and this is our problem. How are we going to solve it? And everyone else stopped thinking at that point. They would be thinking, okay, a solution we found, we have an assumption, this is the problem, and they have an action plan. Everyone starts working on that. And after a certain period of time, they find, okay, we found a problem and we're working on it, and we're still drifting. What happened? Because what happened is that the failure follows. You missed out all the other information that other people could have come up with. You gave a decision, everyone followed through, they aligned around that idea, whatever assumption you had, and they started working on it without checking. So as a leader, it's very important that you are comfortable to be uncertain long enough to find that different other informations in that liminal space.
But how many leaders are secure in themselves to recognize I don't have all the answers?
No.
And that's okay. That's why I have my team, because it's in the synergy, it's in the collaboration of your group think tank, so to speak, where answers will surface. And I attended a while ago, which I think was informed with 9/11, where the military and all the organizations involved began to evaluate, well, how was it possible that we didn't pick up on this sooner, etc., etc. And so they began to develop this red. I think there's a terminology for red team thinking, but what it's based on, if I'm correctly recall, is to let everyone in the room express their thoughts and ideas. And the way they, for example, did this was, first of all, they asked the question, what do you think is the problem? So everyone had to write it on a card. Not expressing it. This was the important thing. Not sharing it yet, because here's the key. When we start writing things down, our brain is already starting to process, and therefore we start refining it. That's very different than when we start expressing it immediately. So they wrote it down, what they thought individually what the problem was, and then they gathered the cards, and then they shared the cards again to different people. So you get not your own card again. And then they asked people to read out loud what was on the card.
Interesting.
Now here's what made it very interesting. There was one black person present, and her card was being read out loud by a white person. She said afterwards, for the first time I felt that my voice was being heard. Because previously I was never being considered.
Wow, that's powerful.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, so wise leaders will, to be honest, but this is another topic. Senior leaders, the more senior you are, it's not about you. You ask first what people are sensing, and then afterwards you come with your thoughts, not the other way around. Because you have to draw out, you have to feel, I would say, the sense the temperature, or whatever it is, so that you then can come to a cohesive conclusion. But everyone, the interesting thing is,
Bottom-up leadership rather than top-down, because
yeah,
hierarchy is
exactly,
a problem. When you start, when you come up, and as a leader, you opened your mouth and you come up with the decision, and you said, okay, I know what the problem is. This is what we're going to do. Everyone else thinks, okay, even though I have different ideas, I have different information, that we're not sure that if it's going to work or not, but also we are not sure if mine one are going to work or not. But the thing is that there are a lot of different options that we haven't explored yet.
exactly, and this is so crucial, and reminds me of a movie, a Chinese movie I just saw recently.
Hmm.
It's called The God of War, The Master of War, The God of War, and it's basically about a Chinese general who has to. Well, there are two Chinese generals. Let's explain this. Two Chinese generals. One general for months is attacking Japanese pirates in a certain location, and basically a lot of casualties. And he always has the same strategy, and nothing changes.
Hmm.
So the higher leadership decides we need to put a new general in place, and because he had some success in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I loved about this new general, he didn't diminish the earlier general because he really respected him. But the first thing that he did was doing nothing. He
Hmm.
was observing. He was observing the landscape. He was observing the entourage, everything, the localities, etc. After that, he developed a strategy. But he was willing, even so far, that he raised a complete new army because the current army was so fearful of the pirates they didn't even dare to fight them anymore.
Hmm.
So he created a new army who had never been exposed to them, learned new tactics, and within a short time frame they won the war. But what made me realize, looking at this, some leaders are so locked into their methodology. This is the way how we do it, and we do it forever like this. No one is ever going to change this because this is how we think we should do it. And then you have a leader who basically says, well, this seems to be not working, so we have to become more creative. We have to become more adaptable. We have to play what the environment is showing us. So he was willing to learn and adjust and even recreate. Now that to me comes back to creativity, that I feel uncertainty is the best birth ground for it.
No, what makes uncertainty so unbearable is the lack of control, especially high
Yeah,
achievers. They always like to be in control. And when
yeah,
they lose that control. So it's important, as you just mentioned, that even when you say that I'm learning to cope with this certain thing, when you're saying this word learning and your brain learns that, okay, a solution is coming
yeah.
and we are adapting to it. And this is one of the ways you definitely know about the idea of growth mindset.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's the idea of the growth mindset that, okay, I don't know yet, but I'm getting there. I'm working on it. And there's a solution waiting for me. And
yeah,
there's a life coach also. I like this very interesting idea. Said that sometimes because you want control, you feel like you have no control, you have no answers. Just write down an answer for yourself. Even if that's not the right answer, that's not the right solution. When you're faced with this problem, write down and read that.
yeah,
First of all, calm yourself down. Because most of the time, the emotions we feel
mm,
anytime in a stressful situation, the physiological manifestation that happens, they found that it lasts for 90 seconds
yeah,
normally. So that's your moment when we start just doing anxious fixing, as I was saying, that you try to do some other things, you just rush around and see if I send some emails, clean the house, and I will find a solution, calm myself down. Rather than doing it, this 90 seconds, you're getting all this emotional
yeah,
manifestation in your body. What do? You can count from 90 to 1. Just take your time, but if it feels too much, you can do like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Normally, if you do it 18 times, you reach 90. But if you don't count, just keep counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As
Yeah,
long as possible. Like you're keeping your mind busy because you need to sit down with it and, as you say, be adaptable and be creative. Unless you let yourself get distracted by some other things which has no connection with the solution that you need and
yeah,
the matter that you have in hand, and also what's making you anxious. If you don't have the solution for it, there's no point in running around with doing something totally different, which is
yeah,
totally irrelevant to this
yeah,
problem.
yeah. We have to explore, identify, well, what is the anxiety about,
Yeah.
instead of running away from it. And this is where the problem kicks in. You see, when people face uncertainty by, the life disruption, they either start coping, which can
Mm.
be in alcohol, which is basically tranquilizing your anxiety levels, and which temporarily gives a nice feeling, but
Mhm.
it will bite you back the next day because
Anxiety is still there. The problem is still there. It's not going anywhere.
it's not going anywhere. So whatever coping strategy is being developed, it will not dismantle or attack, so to speak, the root cause. And that's why going through the emotions is so important. And that's why I said earlier, we need to change our relationship to uncertainty and what it brings to us. Because if
Mhm.
we see uncertainty as an enemy, we will see it as a threat.
How would
And
you
if we,
go through the emotions or the anxiety?
by feeling it, not by suppressing it,
Mm.
by expressing it and feeling it. And I will be honest, when I went through my ordeal initially, I had panic attacks, and it was for the first time. I never had a panic attacks, and my body started uncontrollably shaking. And I thought, what the? It was really a surreal experience. And I had a friend at the time who I phoned. I said, I don't know what's happening, but my whole body is just completely shaking. And I began to describe how I feel. He said, sounds like you have a panic attack. So the person gave me some tips and said, don't fight it,
Mm.
because that makes it even worse. So I know what it can do to you. But I also began to realize, what am I entertaining in my brain?
Mm.
It's almost like, and this is to speak metaphorically, it's almost like the gates of the door of my house is continuously open. So whatever comes in, I just entertain it, and without checking. Well, wait a minute, you have no permission here to stay. I don't want you here. Out. So that's the same with thoughts. Certain thoughts come in of worry, of panic, or old scripts, and they just take their residency because you allowed it.
There's a
And
technical naming, as you just mentioned. So when you have a feeling, you just name it. So, okay,
yeah,
am I catastrophizing it?
yeah,
Am I resisting it?
yeah,
So it means that the moment you do that, if I, okay, I can back off a little bit, because if you don't control it, because this anxiety, all these thoughts are
yeah,
just running wild inside your brain. The
yeah,
moment you name them, name that feeling, then straight away you understand, okay, my thoughts are not me. That's not my identity.
yeah, yeah,
This is just, that's what's happening here.
yeah,
But that's not my situation. I
yeah,
have to find a grip. So,
yes. And this is the interesting thing. I also learned, breathing. When you feel anxiety rising, how to do breathing exercise so you become more peaceful.
uh-huh.
Now, the interesting thing is, when we start to be anxious, it's our mind is getting into a spin. And I always compare it like this: we are faced with an uncertain situation. Our huge memory data files in our lives. Our mind is going through all the data, all the
Mm,
stories of data that have been collected over the year you were born and to the day till yesterday, for example. It goes through all the files
uh-huh.
because it wants to find a file that matches your current reality. And when it can't find it, that's where it starts to spin because it's basically panicking. And I realized for myself when that happens that, oh, Marco, you just have to create a new file. That's all it
Mm-hmm,
is.
mm-hmm.
I have to create a new experience. I've not experienced this before. So my mind thinks like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to handle it. Say, no, of course you don't. But you're not my master. You're my servant. So be quiet.
Yeah.
We need to create a new file.
It's like
And
having a process in place, how
yes,
you'll navigate the chaos.
yes. And that's where basically I start to recreate. I start to create something. And so how does that translate in reality? So when I did my training, I start immediately practicing because at the end of the day, I have to pay my bills. So one day, and this is the reality, I just want to make this real, right? One day I woke up, I felt very low because the challenges are still there, death was still there, etc. And so there's this low mood of, oh my gosh, it's a new day. And then I said to myself, I'm not having it. I'm rising, change your physiology,
Mm.
right? I took a shower, dressed myself, went to a place, and I said to myself, I will go somewhere, we'll have a talk to a stranger, the person will hire me, and we will pay my bills.
Mm.
And that's exactly what happened.
You just mentioned this one because I remember back in 2020, 21, when the pandemic hit. At that time, I was homebound too, like everyone else, because initially the first few weeks and the month as well, very tough. And during that time, even though I didn't know about that at the time, but I had a ritual. I would get up by 7:30, 8 o'clock, shower, get dressed, and
Yeah,
I would go to my studio and I would sit down on the chair and work on the different music production. And also I was doing some online, I was working with some online television channels and I was doing different shows for them. So I would have to get ready. This was my ritual, and it totally uh, made me quite calm. And I felt like I have a purpose, what I'm doing. Okay,
yeah,
it's not all gone. Some things,
yeah,
and the world is still revolving around me, and all I'm just in that same earth that is
yes,
revolving. So important is to have a ritual, people say, but also for some people, it's very important that you learn to let go of certain things when the
yeah,
situation demands.
yeah,
Say, for example, someone has taken a new job and the demands are quite high at this time, on the time, and especially since they're learning new tools and also new techniques, new skills. So they don't have the time and they cannot have the kind of life they used to have before getting the job. They
yeah,
probably, for a few months at least, they
yeah,
won't be able to maintain the same kind of routine
yeah,
because this is an interesting thing that's been observed. And it was said, I think she's a psychologist. She said that normally we don't resist the change, we resist the loss of the identity, the person we
yeah,
are. And we
yeah,
feel like what's going to happen? It's not me, even subconsciously.
yeah,
Sometimes we struggle that we are losing that identity. But
yeah,
we have to learn to sometimes put it on hold when and let go of certain things. To give an example, when I was doing my research project, we were on holiday because the holiday was booked, and Esther had this plan. The family would be there. We go to France every year in Annecy. But what we did, we had a studio flat just overlooking the lake. And throughout the day, in the morning, I'll get up. There was a chair. I just pushed the chair next to the window because it wasn't next to the window. So I could see everything and I won't miss out too much. And I will see every now and then Esther is going under my window. She's walking past and she can wave at me. But I didn't leave that room most of the time. I had my dinner, I had my lunch sitting there, and I was just typing away, writing, and doing my research project. So I feel like I decided at the time to let go of certain routines in my life. I didn't work out at the time. Anyway, I was out. No, but normally I would go out for a run. I didn't do that. I was sitting there eating, sitting at the table. I didn't leave my chair. And I was just working. My ambition was just to get it done. And it's the weirdest place to do your research project. People would, but I said, okay, I have no other option. I didn't want to disappoint because it's a plan she had and she wanted me there. And
yeah,
I would also like to be there at least in spirit because every now and then I had taken breaks in the afternoon. I would go sit by the lake with the rest of the family and with Esther. But if I wanted to keep all the same routine during that uncertain moment, I wouldn't be able to face it. So
yeah,
sometimes you need to learn to let go.
yeah.
And ritual is there, but that's the flip side of ritual. If you have a ritual that keeps you calm, but there are times in your life, in some uncertain times, when you have to let go of your ritual too.
It's vitally important that you do find a support structure that is either through a coach or mentor or people who are willing to listen and support, because I think that's the other side of the coin. And I have experienced that too, by the way, by sometimes complete strangers receiving the kindness out of unexpected moments
Mm.
when you most needed it. And that made me realize if we all would be more empathic and more compassionate and look beyond our own little world,
Mm.
we could be maybe be a bridge for somebody without even realizing that we are a bridge for them. And it could be anything, it could be very practical. To make life, you can't maybe solve somebody's problem, but at least you can show some humanity. Um,
Or make it
that's
easier for them.
make it something easier in order to start rebuilding. That is humanity in action. That's compassion in action, and we all need that. But the unfortunateness is that not everyone has it for all kinds of different reasons.
For people, just a segue. So Marco's example, where we discussed about this one, if you want to go back and listen to it, it's our episode 1, when we talked about grief and loss.
Yeah,
So I would ask everyone, because many people shared with me as well, they are enjoying the different conversation, and it's really gratifying whenever you find there's a listener or a viewer, they would literally pinpoint a particular point in a podcast or a podcast episode. They say, "Oh, when you talk about this," and it's then I realize that they have listened to the whole thing. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
really
yeah,
nice. So
yeah,
yeah. So I would invite people to have a listen to that, because Marco shared, this is, you get a shortened version here, but Marco
yeah,
shared the whole thing, and also Marco's own experience regarding grief and loss and how he coped with that.
yeah.
Anyway, back to you, Marco.
Yes, yeah, and so find a routine, find structure, start investing what is happening between your ears. That is paramount,
Mm-hmm.
and that is where I feel most people struggle. And it sounds maybe radical, but I still believe it to this day. Your
Yeah.
mindset will determine your outcome. Even you're hunger you can survive. Even though I lost, I think, 20 kilos in that time frame within a very short time frame. It's not recommendable weight loss, I would say, but anyway, it happened.
But it had
Uh,
to go, you had to let go. I mean, you
I had
have
to
no
let go.
control. This is also part of those, as I was saying, withins and beyonds. That is beyond your control at the time.
Yeah.
So coming back to everything that I'm trying to join them, like what we are
Yes.
discussing, because we are wrapping it up slowly.
Yeah.
So during a time when things happen to you, which is not beyond your control, like Marco lost his health, so that's under that column of beyond. But what do you do? During the time you find your new ritual. So you have to be creative. So you have to be creative, but how are you going to do that? You listen to your body and see the physiological emotion that you are, how it's manifested. Then you take actions. As I was saying, that 90-second window is very important. If you can calm yourself down, the count backwards. Even if you do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 18 times, or don't count, just do it. And to divide the fears, and also when you name your fears or your feelings, everything we talked about, we touched upon these different interesting ideas, what you're feeling, different feelings, different emotions that's going through your body. And what I was saying, that naming is an important thing. That
Yes.
these are just my thoughts. And
Yes.
these, whether I call it just, I'm spiraling, I'm resisting, I'm
Yeah.
catastrophizing,
Yeah.
things like that, you are just going through a phase. You just name that feeling, but
Yeah.
that's not you.
Yeah. It's
You
not.
have
It's not.
to
Yeah.
detach yourself. So
Yeah.
that's very important. Another thing I would like to add to this is that you have to have a process, which we discussed, and you said that too. So this process is very important. Any successful person we see in their life, if you explore, you find that they always relied upon some kind of process to navigate through the chaos.
Mhm.
Sometimes the old pattern works, sometimes it doesn't. But then you create another process.
Yeah.
And once you keep on doing it, you build that muscle. That when you look back, you see that, okay, I've done it before. You have conquered, so to speak, those uncertain times, what you have done, how you have faced it, and
Yes.
why you had been successful. So you'll find the answer there, and it will make you feel like, okay, I haven't lost control. I have seen this before. I know how to do that, and I will do it again.
Yes. And that's what I call, what I basically use in my life make mastery. which is not a scripted methodology, is basically signposting.
Mm,
Because it's all depend on people's individual circumstance, so it's not a copy and paste thing. But
yeah.
signpost is basically to help you. Am I right on track? Am I, basically some anchor points to give you a kind of sense of direction as we navigate when people are interested, when you're navigating through this. And by letting go of my older identity, my old roles, and grieve that and mourn that, but at the same time in process, what can I now create? What can I do now differently?
But to be honest with you, before I started coaching others, I used to think, why would people have this service or why would they need me? Because I had been working on myself, so I felt like everyone has those answers. So I used to think that everyone has the answers like I do. I felt, why would they avail themselves of my service? But then I realized when I started coaching that how so many of the people around us, that they have no idea where their life is going and how they're leading their lives. And sometimes this is one of the reasons as well, they find themselves that's totally in a position that they feel that they're totally lost. And that's when someone can help them see. Because as a coach, I would like to mention people, whoever don't have the idea what a coach does, they don't give you any advice. You have the answers within you because that's your life. I'm living my life. I have my own experiences. Marco has his own experience. So he has the answer. I cannot tell Marco what to do, and he cannot tell me, Ershad, this is what you should do. Because my lived experience, my life experience, everything, and every answer is within me. But sometimes we don't know how to get that out of our system.
Yeah, because
That's
we
when
don't see it.
I don't see it. But a coach, they make you see it, even though they can see it. Sometimes they don't, but how they communicate with you, and this is where the coaching technique comes in, and this is how they find it out and also let you see it, that the answer is within you. And
Mm.
many times I've seen that the breakthroughs that happen whenever I'm doing this coaching and I'm asking a question, rather than giving the answer, they're like, oh my God, Ershad, what you just
Yeah,
said. Sometimes also they come up with things like, Ershad, it's not right. I know the problem is with me. I said, don't do that. They would also say, Ershad, probably this is not the right answer. I said, there's no right or wrong answer. It's your life. And who said that there's a right or wrong answer? You have the answer. You'll find it. It will come out. But be patient. Go through it. But I love the breakthroughs, you know. They just say, wait, let me think. Oh my God.
yeah,
And they've just found the answer, you know.
yes.
So that's the beauty.
That's why I call myself a window cleaner. I just help people to see clearly.
Yeah.
We all have, and me included, because I really want to stress this. I had other people cleaning my eye window, so to speak, because I couldn't see it, because I had such a distorted perspective because of certain things, until I started, with the help of an outsider, to distance myself and realize, well, wait a minute, what is my narrative? What is really driving this thing? And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have a choice. So then I made the decision, got my agency back, and then take action on it. And this is why action is so important.
That's what this
Inspired action.
conversation does to me, trust me. Even when I'm listening to you, or sometimes I'm repeating things that I want to share with others, but then when you say that, it's an affirmation. You
Yeah,
hear yourself say, and you're like, okay, and there's some breakthroughs that happened to me during the conversation as well, to be honest with you. So I
yeah,
don't know about you, you can say that for yourself, but for me, many times it happened that, oh, that's what I felt. Okay. But at the time, I wasn't. But when I'm talking, we are having this back and forth discussion, the answers come to me.
yeah,
So, on that note, I would say people who are watching us, if you need that help, definitely you have our contact details, Marco's, mine. You'll find it in the show description and you can get in touch. We can help you. We'd be happy to help. And definitely, this free service we give through YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to or watch us, you can probably in exchange leave some comments, your feedback, so how we can
yeah,
improve things.
yeah,
And also like and subscribe. That would help us too, because it would help us share this message and spread this message to a wider audience. So, on that happy note, until next week, please be brave with your growth and make it count. Keep knowing who you are.